on the Horizon IT scandal as Sunak says new legislation will be introduced to exonerate victims. But first, let's talk about another issue covered during Prime Minister's questions, which is, of course, Sunak's flagship Rwanda bill, due to be debated next week for 2 days in the House of Commons.
Well, joining us now is Conservative MP for Stoke-on-Trent North, Jonathan Gullis. Good afternoon to you, Jonathan. Sir Keir Starmer really went for Rishi Sunak at PMQs over this Rwanda scheme, calling him Mr. Nobody, who is scared of his own MPs. Is Rishi Sunak scared of you?
I think Sir Keir Starmer was actually busy talking about himself. And as for the idea of flip-flopping, I couldn't believe the irony when I heard that. This is Sir Keir Starmer, the man who campaigned on 10 pledges to be leader of the Labour Party, then ditched every single one of them since becoming that leader. The man who called Jeremy Corbyn a friend, who's now trying to pretend that they never were. A man who has said that he would surrender our borders to his buddies in Brussels and move it to the Mediterranean and allow 100,000 plus illegal migrants who have come to through the Mediterranean into the UK, putting more pressure on school places, more pressure on the NHS, and cost even more to put even more people in hotels. That man is a charlatan. That man is clearly just saying things in order to try and grab a cheap headline. The Prime Minister has been working diligently to make sure that we do everything we can to stop the boats, and has had huge success with the Albania scheme, a 93% drop in Albanians. We've seen a drop of a third of actual arrivals over 2023. But of course, I want to make sure that this important piece of legislation does work. We've suggested some amendments that we think are within scope of the red lines the Prime Minister laid, that will mean the Rwandan government won't run away from the deal, that will be within the scope of international law, and that means we can deliver on that important pledge to stop the boats. The Conservative Party is the only party in Parliament that is serious about stopping them.
Now, Jonathan, it's true that Sir Keir Starmer had, of course, abandoned those 10 pledges on which he stood to be leader. But you mentioned there a number, 100,000 migrants. The Labour Party very much strongly deny that that is their policy. It seems to be a number that Conservative campaign headquarters has come up with. The Labour Party has never committed to a number of illegal migrants it would want to take in.
Tom, I'm talking about the comments that Sir Keir Starmer gave as he was touring around Europe with his best buddy Yvette Cooper, who, as we know, is very keen to see small boats' arrivals, when she was holding up a sign saying refugees welcome. This is the reality of what we're facing here, that he was willing to do a deal in an EU quota sharing scheme that means we would have, as part of that deal, to take people into this country from other parts of Europe who have arrived on European shores illegally. Those are just facts that Sir Keir Starmer can't run away from. And ultimately what we're making very clear is that it's the Conservative Party who, as I say, with working with the French in part, with obviously the Albania deal, with obviously this Rwanda legislation, are doing everything that they can. And I know this firsthand because the Prime Minister has worked with me to make sure that one of our hotels in Stoke-on-Trent is one of the first 50 that will see it close. That means that we'll be able to get it back to its proper use, directly opposite our railway station, a gateway to our great city, as well as obviously taking financial pressures off our local authority at a particular time when budgets are squeezed. This is the reality. But as I say, the amendments that we've laid, and I think it's important to stress that the two central tenets of our amendments are to make it the default position to ignore these pyjama injunctions, these Rule 39 orders, and to stop the merry-go-round of individual claims by agreeing with the Prime Minister that Rwanda is safe, but saying that individuals will not be able to claim that they personally would not be safe in Rwanda, and it's simply about whether or not someone's fit to fly. If we can get those amendments agreed by the government, we will get lots of people off the ground in the UK over to Rwanda, deliver this partnership, set the bar for the world, and I'm sure we'll see many other safe third countries come forward wishing to take part in the scheme.
But the reality is there's not going to be that many people who end up going to Rwanda on these flights. And what I also want to just ask you is, if you're unsuccessful in these amendments, how tempted are you to then side with Labour to actually defeat the whole bill?
So to your original question, if I may, the first one, let's be honest, we're talking about scaling up how many people we'll be able to send to Rwanda. And again, the rest of the world is looking at this Rwanda partnership, and there are deals to be done with other safe third countries in other parts of the world if we can make this scheme work. So I have no doubt that we'll be able to very quickly scale up once we can demonstrate what we're doing. In terms of how I'll vote, I'll be perfectly frank. Obviously, I'm working day and night now with my colleagues, Danny Kruger and Miriam Cates, excellent co-chairs, the New Conservatives, as well as Simon Simon Clarke and Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman to get the government to adopt these amendments, and we're delighted to have over 30 people so far sign it. We hope we'll see more names in the coming days ahead, so that we can show that we have a really big feeling on the backbenches of the Conservative Party. And then, once those amendments, we've gone through committee stage, we've gone through report stage, we see what the bill looks like by the time it comes to third reading. That is when I will have to make a decision, but only then will I make that decision, when I see the bill in that state.
So is there a chance you could side with Labour to defeat the whole bill, ultimately?
I'm making it very clear that I promise you all options are on the table, and I will wait to see what the bill looks like as and when it returns for third reading once it's gone through the committee and report stage.
Wow, that is stark. And just finally, Jonathan Gullis, are you at all concerned about what the Rwanda government has said about this bill, putting warnings, frankly, before members of Parliament that if the bill goes much further and becomes more ambiguous with regard to how it interacts with international obligations, the Rwandan side of this could face pulling out of this deal altogether? Is that a concern for you?
Well, you'll appreciate, Tom, that I was probably quite sceptical when I heard this comment made, but of course I want to make sure that we take that threat, as it may be, seem to others, seriously. So what we've done in drafting these amendments is had legal experts and lawyers help us draft them, that we have got legal advice from a very high esteeming KC, a former Attorney General of Northern Ireland, who has said that he believes that the amendments are within the scope of international law. They are also, therefore, not going to spook the Rwandan government, and because the arguments around international law are there. But we're keen to also have this debate about international law, to be perfectly frank, as well, because to my mind, it should not be that international law supersedes the sovereignty of our Parliament when it comes to the fact that we as MPs are here to serve the British people, have control of our borders, and as well as make sure that we have the nation's security at heart. And I think we're seeing many nations across Europe have that very same debate and discussion too. So we're very confident that this is within the scope of international law. It's met the Prime Minister's red lines that he set for us. We therefore hope that he can send that to the Rwandan government, the amendments that we've laid that are public, to see what their views are on it and feed that back to us. But ultimately, I believe they should adopt these. This will not harm that deal, and we will be able, as I say, to get people off the ground as soon as possible.
Well, Jonathan Gullis, it's shaping up to be an impressive showdown next week. We look forward to seeing that debate, that healthy debate on the green benches. Thank you very much for sharing your plans with us here on GB News.